Chapter 152. 3. Be good. Pat head, I am not going to sneak my way in but will openly walk into the place. Lu Junyao said with a meaningful smile. Towards the young lady's look of incomprehension, he stretched his palm out and a fiery red round token badge appeared, inscribed with the words Deviant Department Teacher, and a circle made up of 7 shiny gold stars at the bottom. Teachers were given different grades as well, and the highest grade there was 7 stars. The Deviant Department had never had a teacher since its founding, so when Lu Junyao took that token badge out, Qin Yu was stunned for a few seconds. This is a very good imitation. It looks really authentic. Lu Junyao smiled. That is not a replica, but a 7-star teacher token badge that has been authenticated to be as real as it can ever get. Qin Yu still looked as if she did not believe it as she glanced at him before taking the token from his hand to carefully inspect it, and to finally see 3 characters on the back of the token that read, Lu Baiqian. Who is Lu Baiqian? It's a fake name that I used in these low-level lands in the past, the man said indifferently. Qin Yu still did not look like she believed him completely. Isn't the name you gave yourself a little too haphazard? Why not Qianwan then? Qianwan will sound too tacky. The sound of that will hint too strongly of the stench of money, wouldn't it? Lu Junyao said with disdain. Qin Yu was greatly amused by his reply. So Bai Qian does not stink with the stench of money then? Qin Bei's eyes then turned away from that man and he thought to himself in his heart. Except for the first time that he saw this man where he found him frightening, he seems to be quite an amiable fella in private. After hearing that the man was a long-lost friend of his mother's and that they were on very good terms, together with the fact that he was conscientiously helping to find his mother's scattered soul fragments, he no longer felt any enmity towards the man in such a situation. It seemed to him that they still had more things to talk about and Qin Bei stood up to say, I would like to go walk about downstairs. Qin Yu raised her eyes to look at him. Then you wait for me downstairs and do not stray too far off. Qin Bei agreed and then went walking out. Lu Junyao found that scene a little amusing. Aren't the two of you twins? You are both the same age, but why are you always acting so old and matured, but he is acting like a kid in front of you? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, how are we the same at all? I am someone who has lived 2 lifetimes and would naturally be more matured. Qin Yu reasoned. She had already told Lu Junyao that she had come over from another world before, and when he heard that, Lu Junyao had been highly curious. Alas, as intelligent and powerful as you, what could have possibly caused your downfall? The smile at the corners of Qin Yu's lips suddenly stiffened, the expression on her face seemingly showing a brief moment of pain before her lips curled up, mocking herself as she said in acceptance, because of a yearning for feelings that should not be. Lu Junyao paused and it was a long while before he asked softly, was it someone you like? Chapter 152. 4. Be good. Pat head, someone I liked. Qin Yu shook her head and laughed. Maybe, but let's not talk about that. But her non-committal reply made Lu Junyao certain that she was hurt by love and he could not help but feel a little strongly about it. Aunt Lan had ended up with her soul scattered all over the place and it was not known whether she was dead or alive, all because of a man. It seemed like it was the same for her daughter, who died once because of a man. The word love really torments people. Unknowingly, the sun was already dipping over the horizon and dusk fell. Just before she left, Qin Yu then remembered to ask something and she turned herself around to look at the man behind. Do you know Feng Tianhen? Lu Junyao raised an eyebrow. Why? That man gives me a very strange feeling. Qin Yu furrowed up her brows. Gathering up her thoughts, she then continued, I cannot seem to read him, and he just feels very unreal, like he is not a complete person. Lu Junyao's face did not seem very surprised but merely replied, why have you come to notice this person? With that question, Qin Yu's brows knitted up tighter. Because he was the one who invited me to join the deviant department personally, and his gaze makes me very uncomfortable, like something evil has their eyes fixed on me. I am certain that I do not know him, and it is even more impossible that he could possibly have known me, so I feel that this person very frightening. Lu Junyao folded his arms and looked at Qin Yu calmly, a teasing glint in his eye as he said, "That doesn't sound like you at all. If you do not like the way he looks at you, then just dig his eyes out." Qin Yu glared at him, feeling a little miffed. I am now a disciple of the Faint Mist sect. If I act too arrogant and draw too much attention to myself, how am I going to be able to investigate the traces of my mother? Don't you know the saying, want of forbearance might bungle grand plans? She shouldn't have vented out her concerns with this guy. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The smile on Lu Junyao's face intensified as he watched the girl bristling in anger and came to find it rather amusing. He subconsciously stretched his hand out to pat the soft hair, trying hard to contain his laughter. So you've turned to become such a good girl now? That's just great. After all, I will be your teacher in the days ahead. It's fine in private, but you cannot be unruly when we're in front of others. Qin Yu was stunned, her eyes widened with incredulity as she stared at him. Has this fella's self-assumed sense of familiarity between them have advanced to a level that he starts patting her head? In the end, before she could even show her rage, she saw the man's devilishly handsome face lean in close, the eyes seeming like violet precious stones filled with teasing mirth, and his thin lips parted slightly at her ear. When you said that you hated the way that man looked at you, you looked just like a kid who had been bullied outside and came running back to complain to your lord. Qin Yu exploded with rage. She had just been taken advantage of, didn't she? Chapter 153. 1. Baddie. Pay me back for my hand. Pay me. After the recruitment trials, there was a welcome meet held for the batch of new disciples, and there was basically nothing much more happening till the end of the year. The biggest gain of the Faint Mist sect this entire year was that they managed to recruit an all-element prodigy that was very rarely seen across the entire lands throughout history. It was heard that one so favored by the heavens to be uniquely gifted with maximum levels in both soul power and martial strength would definitely become a leading figure in whatever profession one chose, and he could also choose to cultivate several different professions at the same time. But this prodigy had kept an extremely low profile since being accepted into the Faint Mist sect, and except for the people who were present in the Great Hall back on the day of the trials, few others knew her. Besides knowing that she was a very young lady, nothing else was known about her. If it was any other person who possessed such gifted talents, they would have gladly publicly blown their own trumpets, afraid that the whole world would not know it, but this young lady was really one of a kind. Today was the day that the new disciples would report to the various departments they have been assigned to, and all of them had senior disciples to come lead them there. Ming Yi was naturally going to the Soul Cultivators department. Her elder brother was in, and just before she left, she looked at Qin Yu a little worriedly and said, "You have to be careful. I heard from my big brother that the bunch of people on the Deviant department are especially hard to deal with, and that they like to bully new recruits." Qin Yu lifted up an eyebrow and asked, "Do you think that I will be so easily bullied?" Ming Yi creased up her brows as she looked at the young lady's thin and slender body with a measuring gaze, which seemed to look so frail, and she could not help but worry a little. Those guys at the Deviant department will not even give any thought to cherish such beauty and to be gentle with delicate women, and the girls in there are even more atrocious than the guys. So do not clash with them head on, and if you really get bullied, you're thinking too much into it. Qin Yu could not help but interrupt the girl. You forget that I am a prodigy whose martial strength is at the maximum level. But they are many in numbers and you are all alone. Ming Yi continued to say in worry. Or maybe I should get my big brother to go with you. At the very least, he commands a certain status here in the Faint Mist sect, and they would surely give big brother some face. Qin Yu really did not know what to say to the girl and could only lower her head to laugh. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. this little girl is really something. She was so cold and haughty when they first met, her nose held so high up in the air, and that frail little body of hers was hiding such strong soul powers that it made people not dare cross her. Now that they are on familiar terms, she is suddenly so highly considerate of her well-being. Although she might be rather naggy, but there was no way anyone would dislike her for being so concerned about them. Qin Yu curved up her lips and revealed a bright and radiant smile. Why not we have a bet? A bet? Ming Yi blinked her eyes in confusion. If I get bullied, then it means I lose, and I will have to cure you of your condition within 3 months without taking a single cent. But if I am not bullied and you lose the bet, then you just have to do one thing. Qin Yu said with an incredibly crafty smile, and if you looked closely, one would even feel like there was a hint of her hatching up a sly scheme. Chapter 153. 2. Baddie. Pay me back for my hand. Pay me. Ming Yi became curious and she asked, what do you want me to do? It must be within the boundaries of my power. I will not agree to it if it's too difficult. Qin Yu did not keep her in suspense but just told her directly. If you lose, you will have to go look for your brother and make your feelings clear to him. How's that? Ming Yi's tiny face turned pale. Wah! What are you saying? Haven't you always liked Ming Jing all this time? You were willing to give your most precious heart's blood to him to let him live that caused your body to decline and fall into such a wrecked state. Are you going to let him be ignorant of that fact his entire life? That a person is willing to sacrifice so much for his sake. Since that is the case, just tell him your true feelings as the two of you are not related by blood anyway. Qin Yu said as she rubbed her chin, looking like a big bad wolf who was trying to entice a little bunny. Ming Yi's face turned an uglier shade. How do you know all these? She was so certain she was willing to guarantee that besides herself, no other person in the entire world knew about the matter. But how did Qin Yu come to know the entire matter so clearly? Seeing a wary and guarded look coming into the young girl's eyes, Qin Yu placed her palm over her face and said with a sigh, have you forgotten that a soul cultivator is able to probe into a person's memories through their dreams? When I was checking your body for your condition, I happened to see it because your heart was too highly fixated on this matter, and was unable to let go of this memory. Ming Yi was first startled, and then her eyes grew conflicted. You can really drive people insanely jealous. You are clearly an elixir cultivator but you also possess the abilities of a soul cultivator as well. That is not the most important thing now. Qin Yu said dismissively. Because when I was returning back here from outside, I saw Ming Jing together with a very beautiful girl, and there was also a smile on his face. It was widely known that Ming Jing was a cold and aloof person whose face was incapable of showing any expression. To think that he would come to be so friendly and smiley with a girl, that just meant that the girl held an exceptional place in his heart. Hearing that, Ming Yi subconsciously bit down on her lip, her thin fingers clenched up tightly without saying a word. I just felt that it must have been very painful for you when I saw that part of your memory. But I will of course not want to be a busybody and whether you will do it is still all up to you. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Ming Yi's eyes grew red-rimmed and her body trembled slightly. She had already left the Soul Cultivators tribe and she had nothing left in the world, but just her elder brother. If Big Brother were to also leave her. The young girl's eyes suddenly steeled with determination. Regardless whether you win or lose, I will still let my big brother know that I like him. Qin Yu smiled and patted her on the shoulder before turning away to walk out from there. Had she done a good deed here? Due to the uniqueness and the danger of the deviant department, it was situated a little further away than the other departments. Qin Yu roughly estimated in her heart that it had taken her about a quarter of an hour to walk there from the place she was staying in. Chapter 153. 3. Baddie. Pay me back for my hand. Pay me. Because she was not really all too familiar with her way around, she had asked for directions along the way. When they saw that it was such a beautiful young lady, they all quickly blushed a little before they came to realize that she was asking for directions to the deviant department. They were stunned for a moment before their eyes would then look at her like they were staring at a monster right before them for a moment. After ascertaining that she was really asking for directions to the deviant department, their faces became highly sympathetic. They looked like they wanted to say something but held their tongues, quickly giving her the directions before quickly scuttling away with big steps. Qin Yu could not help but found it rather amusing. Could that place be filled with wild and malevolent beasts? Do they have to exaggerate it so much? Deviant department. The disciples' morning lessons usually start at 1/4 the Mao hour after dawn, as no matter which profession they were in, even the most frail-bodied elixir cultivators would need a strong and healthy body, so being an early riser was a lesson all of them had to practice. Since the deviant department was established, it had already been 7 to 8 years already, but the place only had a pitiful 11 members. They originally had the chance to grow and become much stronger. But as their members were each stranger and more eccentric than the next, rumors about the place grew more and more terrifying as time went by, so even if anyone had wanted to join, no one dared to come to this place. The weather had become colder and the sun was coming up later. It was already 3/4 past the Mao hour that the sky then starting to show a sliver of light. The buildings at the deviant department was very different, and gazing at it from afar, it looked like a palace that had laid dormant for a very long time, sitting over a vast area. Big and tall trees that blocked out the sun were planted around the place, evergreens that stood lush throughout the seasons, unafraid of the chilly temperature, their branches heavy with thick and dense canopies. Hence even when the sun was shining at its brightest in the middle of the day, much of it did not reach inside, making the place look rather gloomy and sinister. From the moment that Qin Yu stepped into the place, she had immediately felt the hair on the back of her neck stand. Not because she was afraid, but the yin energy was too strong in here, so ominous it sent chills through a person, feeling as if there was a strange pair of eyes watching her. Just as she was surveying the surroundings warily, something suddenly tapped her lightly on the shoulder. Qin Yu instinctively grabbed at that thing and gave it a vicious twist. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The crisp clear sound of a crack sounded, and a rather innocent-sounding voice rang out from somewhere. Its hand looks like it has been broken. Not just looks like, but it is really broken. Another voice chimed in. Poor thing. It took 3 months of hard cultivation to grow another hand, and now it's broken again. A third voice then rang out mournfully. Why did you say, again? The innocent-sounding voice asked curiously. I saw it go touch a very feminine-looking man's chest the last time. It thought the person was a girl and wanted to take advantage, and the man snapped its hand right off. The second voice replied. Chapter 153. 4. Baddie. Pay me back for my hand. Pay me. Oh. So because this young lady looks so very beautiful, it just could not resist. The innocent-sounding voice then concluded rather wisely. So stupid. Doesn't it know the more beautiful the woman, the more dangerous she is? Absolutely brainless. The third voice then scoffed with haughty contempt. Qin Yu's face was one of confusion as she stared to her right, to see 3 figures huddled together behind an enormous tree that almost blocked out the sky. They were all lying there in similar positions, thinking themselves well hidden as they conversed in voices that were not exactly soft. What are those things? Qin Yu blinked her eyes, and then turned her head back around stiffly like a machine, to look at the unidentifiable creature that had just assaulted her. And in her hand, she held a broken tree branch. Standing before her, was a youth who looked to be about 15 or 16, and he looked. It was hard to describe with words. He was staring in shock with widened eyes that were just 2 thin slits so narrow they could not be seen. Oh, so he had eyes. His left hand was fleshy and fat while his right hand had a portion broken off. Unable to maintain its form as a normal human limb, it had withered and turned to revert back to a tree's form. Qin lowered her head to look at the tree branch in her hand before lifting her eyes up to look with a conflicted gaze at the thin-bodied youth, but who had a face so fat and pudgy like a ball that she could not find where his eyes and nose were, and she then said in a measured tone, "About that, I did not mean to do that. I thought you were going to attack me." Who would have known that she had just opened her mouth when the youth immediately broke out into a loud wail with mucus running down his nose as he hugged his right hand and curled up into a ball like a porcupine, bawling so pitifully like his parents had just died. "Pay me back for my hand. You've got to pay. Boo-hoo-hoo." Qin furrowed up her brows feeling a little helpless and she then stretched her hand out to hand him the tree branch. Here. The youth snatched it from her hand and then sobbed even more sorrowfully. "You are such a baddie." He then ran away and there was no sign of him anymore. Qin was still a little baffled. Was that a tree that gained consciousness from cultivation? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. It will not be able to come out for another few months. The innocent-sounding voice said with sympathetically. Serves it right. Who asks it to always be so lecherous? A tree that likes to tease pretty girls. It deserves to lose its hand. This was the voice that had sounded rather haughty. But we are trees too. The innocent-sounding voice said in reply. Oh. That's true. Come, let's hurry up and leave. Don't let that young lady discover us. She looks so fierce, and I do not want to look my hand. Qin was speechless. She could hear them clearly. Chapter 154. 1. The highest level of swindling and being swindled. A corner of Qin mouth twitched as she watched the figures behind the trees running away very quickly. Seeing that the figures were merely about half a grown man's height, they looked very much to be young children. The deviant department really has rather strange things inside. She continued on her way forward, passing through the dark and ominous darkness before finally seeing a glimmer of light in front. She did not encounter any more strange creatures as she went straight towards the mysteriously colored building and went inside. It was when she stepped inside that Qin really saw just how enormous the place really was. She could hear her light's footsteps rippling out in reverberation, reaching to very far places, so empty it was unbelievable. With just such few people in the deviant department, but taking up a space that was so much bigger than all the other departments, wasn't it a rather big waste? She was just thinking that when she suddenly heard the sound of a second set of footsteps coming from right behind her. Qin turned herself around subconsciously and saw a sleepy-eyed youth with a tall and thin figure approaching like he was sleepwalking. It was only until he sensed an unfamiliar presence that he suddenly opened his eyes wide, to stare at Qin in bewilderment. Who are you? Qin showed him a highly friendly smile. Hello, I am the new disciple reporting in here today. My name is Qin. The expression on the youth's face changed. You are the newcomer. I am. Qin nodded and replied. The youth immediately reacted like a startled cat and the expression on his face changed dramatically. His originally slow shuffling steps as he ambled his way in earlier suddenly broke into a mad dash like an arrow shot out from a bow into a particular direction, disappearing from sight in a blink. Qin face was one of complete bafflement. Is she that frightening? I don't think so. But having finally seen a human person, and judging from the direction he had dashed off into, Qin could already ascertain where the deviant department's classroom was. This was the first time that she could not find her way around as the place was really just too vast. She walked slowly further inside, finally coming to a stop before a door. It was quiet without a single sound inside, the door slightly ajar by about a palm's width. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Qin raised an eyebrow and lifted her eyes to look up a moment before she stepped away without making any noise. Lass, why don't you just go inside when you're already here? She had just moved herself 2 steps away from the door when a gentle male voice reached her ears. The person was tall and slightly thin, his countenance good-looking. Under his long narrow eyes, there was a red teardrop-shaped mole, which lent an added sense of enchanting allure to the man, giving him an air of comfortable gentleness. Qin Yu remembered this person. It seemed like the expert who specialized in sound attacks that killed countless thousands of venomous snakes and bats back in the Lost Bogs was also from the deviant department. But this man seemed to be much more amiable and easy to get along with, his personality very gentle, unlike the smiling tiger that Feng Tianhen was. Chapter 154. 2. The highest level of swindling and being swindled. It looks like there are normal people in the deviant department. Seeing the man look at her quizzically with a faint gentle smile, Qin Yu hesitated a moment before she completely went on to ignore the minute twinge of guilt that was so small it might very well not have existed in her heart, and started to babble on with a load of made-up nonsense. Well, I heard that the seniors in the deviant department are a little xenophobic, so I thought it might be better if I stayed outside to wait in case I leave a bad first impression on them. Luo Lanji lifted up an eyebrow in surprise, and a look of helplessness flashed across that handsome face. You are so lovably obedient, they will all surely like you. He had not thought that the prodigious young lady the chief recruited would have such a gentle nature. To put it bluntly, it can be said that she makes an easy target for bullying. So if that bunch of rascals in there were to really pick on her, she might just end up enduring it in silence. How can this be allowed? A good number of people had not been able to endure their malicious antics and were driven away by this very bunch in the past, but this one here was someone that the chief had personally said to take good and proper care of, so this young lady must not end up leaving due to the rascal's tormenting ways. With that thought in mind, Luo Lanji was already going to push the door open, to go knock some good sense into the heads of that bunch of mischievous imps. With his mind preoccupied in thought, he had of course not noticed the slightly ajar door and the fact that the young lady had unnoticeably retreated herself way back. The door opened with a creak, and before Luo Zhiyan was able to utter a word, he immediately sensed a wave of danger lunging right straight upon him. His body instinctively reacted, immediately putting up his guard, thinking that someone was out to test him. In the end, what he did not expect was that the danger wasn't from the front, but was actually coming from above his head. Splash! The sound of something splashing down was suddenly heard. The 11 disciples of the deviant department were all fully present in the room, and they had probably been overly confident, and hence did not even look to see who the person that was coming in really was. They just assumed that their prank had worked, and they were all howling with gloating laughter. Ha 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 ha. She would definitely break down into tears from the shock. Although I do not think that we should be bullying people like this, but why am I finding it so hilarious here? Ha ha ha. I don't even dare to see what kind of a dismal and pathetic scene it must be. Wait. Wait. We seem to be in deep trouble. A weak-sounding voice suddenly said in fearful terror. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, what trouble could we get into? What is there to fear? His voice abruptly stopped. In the next second, everyone's faces took on looks of pure horror, looking like they had been forced to swallow 10 caddies of feathers but were unable to spit any of it out. They're all finished. They all could already see how they were going to die that very day. Answer, self-invited death. Luo Lanji's reaction had really been very fast, but he had completely not expected that the wooden bucket that fell down from above him would contain not just water that had turned bitingly cold with the season, but there were also a countless number of disgusting gray mucus slugs in the water. Chapter 154. 3. The highest level of swindling and being swindled. It was a type of slug that was hard to shake off once it latches onto you, an incredibly disgusting kind of creature. Luo Lanji was an even-tempered man, gentle like a gust of spring breeze, but that was before anyone even touches his most bottom line. And that bottom line would quickly be breached when one violates his extremely severe case of mysophobia. Even the slightest smudge of dust on him would make him feel uncomfortable all over, causing his temper to become highly irritable. And right before his eyes were not mere dust. They were the absolutely repulsive and revolting highly sticky mucus slugs. There wasn't any creature that could be more disgusting than that. Luo Lanji had actually dodged from a good half of their numbers by raising up an arm to block the wooden bucket, which caused it to veer away from its original direction, so there were just about 4 or 5 of them stuck on his sleeve. But even though that was the case, for this man who was so clean freak that it was almost an obsessive-compulsive disorder, it was already something he absolutely could not endure. The long narrow eyes then darkened thunderously, devoid of any human emotion. Seeing the soft slush on his sleeve crawling towards his uncovered hand, leaving behind a disgustingly sticky translucent trail in their wake, the sleeves suddenly crumbled into ash together with the mucus slugs in a blink, without a single trace of them to be seen. Of course that was not all. Luo Lanji slowly took off his outer robe and tossed it over the wiggling mucus slugs spilled across the floor. Lifting his eyes up to look at everyone before him, his lips parted slightly as he said, pausing in between each word, "Since the lot of you loves the mucus slugs so much, then clean them all up now. Take note though, that none of your powers are to be used. I want them all picked up with your bare hands." What? That stunned them all like they were struck by a bolt out from a clear sky. The adorable doll-faced girl was thoughtful for a moment before she immediately broke into tears to beg pitifully, "Senior Luo, I have nothing to do with this at all. They were the ones who came up with this idea, and they were the ones who said they wanted to make fun of the new junior girl. Who would have known that after waiting so long for the new junior to appear, it turned out to be you who came in instead?" The last of her words sunk, drowned under Luo Lanji's gaze that grew more and more terrifying. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Oh. Nothing to do with you. Luo Lanji suddenly laughed lightheartedly, as if he had changed back into his elegant and refined self. Just as the young girl thought that she had managed to escape calamity, the man's face suddenly darkened again and spoke in a harsh and severe tone, "You think I do not know that you are the one who likes to fool around with all these vermin and insects? Without your involvement, from where are they going to even find so many mucus slugs?" The doll-faced little girl looked like she was the youngest among all of them there, but she must not be underestimated. Not only her skill in concocting poisons was top-notch throughout the lands, her martial skills was also the top few among that bunch of people. She was of course the one capable of coming up with the most tricks, and often prone to acting pitiful. Luo Lanji was not about to be taken in by her act. The young girl was stunned by that sudden shout. She had never thought that the ever-gentle Luo Lanji who was like a kindly old man could show anger that did not lose out to the chief at all when enraged. Chapter 154. 4. The highest level of swindling being swindled, he was usually rather silent and quiet, but when he erupts, the entire mountain shakes. More than 10 of them stood there in jitters, not daring to make a sound. Besides the chief, it was usually Luo Lanji that was watching over them, being the only other person who was able to control them at all. When they thought how that young girl had so shamelessly dumped all responsibility right onto them without a care, everyone immediately harbored thoughts of strangling her to death right in that instant. Fortunately, Senior Luo was insightful enough to see through her tricks. But what puzzled everyone was, they had clearly seen their new junior fellow disciple making her way here. How did it turn out that Senior Luo was the one who pushed the door to come in instead? It made no sense. Was it already fated that she was to escape calamity this time? Qin Yu stood watching the entire charade unfold, and then suddenly a burst of laughter, seemingly gloating. She immediately drew everyone's eyes to turn onto her. The delicate figure of a young lady stood behind Luo Lanji, looking at them with an almost imperceptible smile on her face, that seemed to be saying something. That dull-faced little girl suddenly widened her eyes and pointed a finger at her angrily. "Did you design this scheme to set us up?" Facing everyone's angry gazes, Qin Yu laughed offhandedly and an eyebrow lifted up slightly. "And how have I set you all up?" You were clearly already going to come in earlier. Why did you suddenly stop, and even lied to Senior Luo? The young girl looked as if she had seen through everything, highly accusatory and aggressive. Qin Yu just simply replied with an indifferent, "Oh," and then turned to look at the calm and unruffled man beside her to say, "Senior Luo, as you can see, both my male and female seniors here have a very bad impression of me, and that is why they placed a bucket of water over the door in this horribly freezing time of the year to make catch my death of a cold. They had even put those disgusting mucus slugs that girls are most terrified of to frighten me as well." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Eu Luo Lonji creased up his brows and said a little remorsefully, "Apologies. I have not been strict with them, which gave them the audacity to commit such a vile deed. I will make sure they all suffer the kind of punishment they deserve." Qin Yu shook her head, her face scrunched up like she was put in a very difficult position. "If Senior does that, they will only detest me even more." Luo Lonji snorted derisively and swept his eyes over the bunch of rascals. "They are merely suffering the consequences of their own actions. All the other departments are saying that the deviant department is filled with a whole bunch of arrogant and uncivilized scoundrels, and seems like it is all true. From today onwards, I will make sure I properly correct the kind impression all of you will come to give people." Someone had wanted to voice his protest, and Luo Lonji's icy gaze immediately turned on to him. "Or would you prefer the chief to personally deal with this matter himself?" Everyone immediately clamped up. Heavens! If Chief comes to know about this, would they still be able to live? Chapter 155. 1. It's alright to be young, you'll grow up one day in the end. The bunch of them had no choice but to obediently endure that nauseatingly slippery touch of the sticky mucus slugs as they picked them all up one by one, to put them back into the wooden bucket. Qin Yu just stood there calm and unruffled as she stood leaning against the door, watching all of them suffer the fruit of their own nefarious scheme. The lousy trick this bunch of rascals had come up with was really just too lame, and it was all pure childishness in her eyes. Did they really think she would fall for such a paltry trick? If she really wanted to vicious, they would all be howling in endless agony. When Luo Lonji saw that they were cooperating obediently, the expression on his face then softened a little. He then turned to the young lady behind and said, "It's embarrassing that you had to see this." He could be forgiven for not having been aware of it before, but at that moment, how could he possibly not be able to see that the young lady was not as weak as she looked, not easily bullied? She was after all such a rare prodigy, an all-element wielder who caught the chief's eye. So how could she possibly be ordinary? She was just being generous and was going to hold it against them. If she really wanted to settle the score, the whole entire bunch of them would not be her match at all. Highly skilled at pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Hearing that, Qin Yu curled up her lips to smile sweetly and then said, "It's all right. I do not hold grudges against little children, as it is in their nature to be mischievous. I am not so domineering as to deprive them of their joy." Luo Lonji's smile stiffened, and for an awkward moment, he did not know what to say in response. On the other hand, the ones fighting down the repulsion from picking up the mucus slugs almost vomited out blood in anger when they heard those words. What the hell? Just which bastard was it who said that their new little junior was easy to pick on? Step forward so that they can strangle him to death. They had really stubbed their toe on a steel plate this time. Their little was such a sinisterly sly little devil, her belly filled with nothing nice. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU to have been so humiliated the first time they met, how were they going to get along in future? Really regret what they had done. Compared to the others who were starting to regret it a little, the young doll-faced girl was feeling highly indignant, and went on to stare vehemently at Qin Yu. She really thinks it's so easy to be part of the deviant department. She's just a little luckier to be able to wield all elements. What's so special about her? Just a weak and feeble elixir cultivator, and she had probably managed to deceive everyone's eyes for the title without possessing any real abilities. She will tear off her mask and expose this woman, so the chief can see just how big a mistake he has made. On the other side, Luo Lanji was speaking to Qin Yu politely. If there is anything you do not understand in future, you can come ask me, or you can also go straight to the chief. As for these rascals, I think they will be a little more restrained with today's lesson. And if any one of them comes up with any more tricks, I think that you are capable of dealing with them on your own. Chapter 155. 2. It's alright to be young, you'll grow up one day. He had not forgotten the fact that his clothes were in such a mess now was also due to her hidden maneuverings. To think that she was audacious and daring enough to trick even him, these bunch of young imps here would not be anything significant in her eyes at all. Qin Yu smiled highly disarmingly. Thank you, Senior, for your concern. If they persist in being stubborn, I will surely help Senior teach them some manners. Kids are usually just acting up when they become disobedient, things will be fine once they are given a good beating. Luo Lanji was at a loss for words. Looks like he really does not have to worry that the young lady will not be able to adapt to her new surroundings at all. The rest of them were also speechless. Oh God, why do I feel a chill running down my back? Why do I have such a bad feeling about this? It was not known who told them this piece of information, that the young lady was not only an all-element wielder, she was also a rare maniacal prodigy with max levels in soul power and martial strength, one among thousands. Hence, everyone unconsciously gulped inwardly. Who would dare to go challenge her? After exchanging nervous glances among themselves, there was only one conclusion. No one dared. That's right, all of them were really that wimpy. They just could not help feeling that their days ahead would not be that wonderful. Having been too used to bullying the weak but was now faced with one of such high skill in manipulation, they were all caught completely unprepared. Qin Yu had acclimatized herself to the place like fish to water, and the worries the others had for her was not seen to be uncalled for. Everything that happened here had also been made known to Lu Junyao as well. Before him, a tall and handsome-looking man dressed in an ink-shade robe was reporting the whole sequence of events to him at that moment. This man was highly familiar-looking. If one took a closer look. Isn't he the human form assumed by the 12th level lightning blaze unicorn after transformation? It was said back on the day after he brought Qin Yu and her companions to the foot of the Faint Mist Sect Mountain, he had disappeared without a sign. He had actually blended himself among the crowd, and took part in the recruitment trials together with them. With his cultivation of a level 12 spirit beast, no one would be his match here in these low-level lands, and it was only natural that no one would be able to detect the extent of his real cultivation. He would just need to suppress his powers and no one would be able to find out, so he had pushed down his cultivation to be just slightly above average, and joined the martial department. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. He had received orders from Lu Junyao right from the start, that he was to protect her in secret, and prevent any accidents from happening. In fact, the Lightning Blaze Unicorn had not been entirely willing in the beginning, as he felt that asking such a high-leveled spirit beast like him to go protect that weak little young lady was just a waste of his talents. But when Luo Junyao allowed him to transform back into human shape, he quickly agreed to it happily. Lu Junyao had even executed a killer move, saying that if he was able to make Qin Yu happy, in a moment of kindness she might very well suddenly decide to prepare a rabbit feast for him, prepared in all manner of ways, braised, steamed, deep-fried, roasted. Each and every kind. Chapter 155. 3. It's alright to be young, you'll grow up one day. The Lightning Blaze Unicorn's eyes were shining bright with tiny stars upon hearing the words as he went on to nod his head in a hurry. Hence, it could said that even or a highly intelligent high-leveled spirit beast who had gained his own consciousness, once his weakness was discovered, he could still be easily controlled. After the Lightning Blaze Unicorn finished talking about the incident, he suddenly raised up a doubt in his mind. I feel that, there is something abnormal about that man called Feng Tianhen. After Qin Yu, even a spirit beast had come to notice something strange about him. It looks like you would have to meet this man as well next time. Lu Junyao raised up the ends of his lips. Abnormal in what way? It would probably be no different from what the little fox has said that day. Unexpectedly, the lightning blaze unicorn creased up his brows and then started to mumble to himself, although his voice could not be considered to be soft. I think that he might be a pervert. Lu Junyao became amused. Huh? How did this go from being abnormal, and then suddenly jumping straight up to being a pervert? That's right, because I noticed a few times that the man was secretly watching the little missy while hidden in the darkness, and his gaze. The lightning blaze unicorn rubbed his chin as he gave it some serious thought, before finally coming up with a great analogy. It's exactly like how the female beasts look at me among we spirit beasts. Although that analogy used as a comparison wasn't exactly that great, and that it contained elements of bragging that stoked the beast's own ego, Lu Junyao was at least able to understand what he meant. The violet eyes surged mysteriously with a glint as he said slowly. Are you saying that Feng Tian Hen harbors ill intentions towards the little fox? That's right. Although the little missy possesses rather good cultivation, but compared to that man, she is still at a slight disadvantage. Moreover, he is intentionally hiding his presence, so she had not noticed that the man had been watching her at all, but I saw everything. All right. I know about it now. I will not be around for the next few days as I have something to attend to, and I will be going to the Faint Mist sect as one of their teachers after that. You keep watch over the little fox in the meantime and do not let anything happen to her in there. Do not let strange and weird people get close to her as well. Lu Junyao gave his orders in a deep low voice, and his gaze then turned to look at the spirit beast icily. And when I come back, if she so much as lose a single hair, mind that you do not lose your skin. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The lightning blaze unicorn felt a chill run down his spine and he immediately straightened his back in a stiff portrayal of loyalty. My lord can set his mind at ease. I guarantee that the young missy will be watched with utmost care. In a blink of an eye, the welcome meat for the new disciples arrived. They would be given 2 sets of the Faint Mist sect's uniform and a token badge that was proof of their identity as disciples of the Faint Mist sect. With that token badge, every action they took in every place they went would represent the Faint Mist sect, and they were to mind what they did in every situation. Their names and the departments they were assigned to that was reflected on the badge. Tokens were carved in with spirit power and were intricately linked to the lives of each and every individual disciple, an unerasable existence. Unless their bodies were dead and their souls destroyed, those words would then disappear from the badges. Chapter 155. 4. It's alright to be young, you'll grow up one day at 1/4 the Chen hour. All the disciples would be gathering in the main meeting hall and the sect leader himself, who seldom showed his face, would be here to lend his support to the welcome meet this time. Qin Yu looked at Ming Yi, who was a little distracted these few days and suddenly recalled the bet they had made before. She called out, feeling rather amused, to the young girl who was folding her blanket layer upon layer neatly. What are you thinking of? It was a good while before Ming Yi noticed that someone had called her, and she raised her head up looking a little dazed. I am merely folding my blanket. Qin Yu glanced at the blanket with amusement. You have been folding that blanket for a good 1/4 of an hour already and you're still not done? Ming Yi then looked a little defeated and then stopped her actions in folding the blanket. What? You told your brother and it shocked him so much that he gave you a fierce scolding? Qin Yu asked with an eyebrow raised. Talking about that, Ming Yi's pretty and adorable little face could not help but show a sliver of frustration. No, he did not scold me, and neither was he shocked. Pausing a moment and her voice sounding so aggrieved that she was going to cry, she then said, his reaction could not have been any more calm. He said, I am still very young and it is completely normal for girls to be fond of those close to me who are of the opposite sex. He merely sees the whole thing just as a joke. Is that what happened? Qin Yu nodded in understanding. Her gaze then swept over the young girl whose body was a little thin and slightly bony due to the long years she had been ill. Ming Yi was the same age as her, and though she was about 5 months older, her body was very petite and looked quite a lot younger than she was. At that age, the places a girl bodies were supposed to develop should have grown to a significant extent, but she still looked like a little girl. Although Qin Yu's body had frequently suffered from hunger and insufficient food 7 years ago, she still looked a lot better than Ming Yi. Hence, Qin Yu patted Ming Yi comfortingly on the shoulder and said, "Don't be sad. You will grow up one day. Maybe when you come to look more feminine, your brother will start to take notice of you." Though what Qin Yu went through when she was younger in the past was from a completely different world. Mu Lai and the others from opposite had already come over to knock on their door, and that topic ended at that moment. Qin Yu went over to open the door. "Are you all ready? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, it will take roughly about half an hour from here to the meeting hall, and it will be just right if we leave now." Mu Lai answered. Many disciples in white robe uniforms could already be seen walking past outside. It was not known what material they used to make the uniforms, as they all had the mystifying air of deities about them, changing one's flair and demeanor once a person put it on. Yan Shiwu said, feeling a little touched, "I had never thought that the day would come that I can really become a member of this place." Speaking about that, she suddenly looked at Yan Shiro a little smugly and said, "That woman Yan Ning Luo always thrown cold scorn and ridicules us every time she comes back to the manor just because she was part of the Faint Mist sect. And what did she say the last time? She said that we would just shame ourselves by being eliminated in the very first round. I would like to see what else she has to say when she sees us this time." It seemed like she had really been badly bullied. Yan Shiwu felt that she had found her voice this time and she would be able to retaliate good and proper this time, so she was not bothered at all whether her words would be heard by others. Chapter 156. 1. Just how terrifying a woman's jealousy can be. Qin Yu glanced at her with a smile. There are still quite a few protectors who will do Yan Ning Luo's bidding without question. With you being a fresh recruit in here, you must remember that what comes out from one's mouth can bring disaster. Hearing that, Yan Shiwu quickly clasped her hand over her mouth with her eyes wide, as she gazed suspiciously all around her. See, she was just being so fierce and aggressive barely a moment ago. Is this what people call the legendary instantaneous timidity? She was probably just reacting to whatever was being said. From afar, a group of people about 5 or 6 in number were walking towards them, and in the lead, was Yan Ning Luo herself. Right beside her, were her 2 loyal protectors who were always by her side, Jiang Yi Han and Shen Jing, together with a few other inner disciples walking with them. It was inevitable that the 2 groups of people would come to meet, as this was the only way to the meeting hall. Qin Yu and the others were still focused on their own conversation as disciples passed all around them, and they did not notice Yan Ning Luo with the others in front of them. But the valiant and pretty-looking Shen Jing was rather sharp-eyed, who noticed the other group immediately. Humans were after all visual creatures, and with that group of 5 young girls, all of them with extraordinary good looks, they had naturally drawn many gazes to look their way. Moreover, one among them was such a peerless beauty that was dressed in those divine white clothes, her facial features more stunning than the most beautiful blossoms, the soul captivating Qin Yu. Beauties were countless throughout the world, but beauties who were unforgettable with just one glance were a very rare few. In the Green Wave Kingdom and even in the Faint Mist sect, Yan Ning Luo's looks was considered an unmatched beauty, and nobody could have thought that within this batch of new recruits, there would be such a beautiful young lady, who did not pale in comparison to Yan Ning Luo in any way, with none of the alluring and luster diminished in the slightest. Yi Han, look at that young girl. Isn't she just such an absolutely beautiful little thing? Shen Jing's personality was candid and magnanimous and not fussy or petty like many other girls, who would become jealous when they see a pretty girl, but was just purely filled with admiration. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Hearing that, Jiang Yihan raised her head to look and her eyes lit up in surprise a moment by the stunning beauty she saw. She then turned to look at the expressionless young lady beside them and went on to say, "She's indeed beautiful, but that kind of beauty is too flamboyant and seductive. I still think Ning Luo is better looking." Shen Jing smiled with a curve of her lips and did not say anything. But when she saw Ning Luo's gaze was fixed upon that group of people, she raised an eyebrow and asked in puzzlement, "Ning Luo, you know them?" As she spoke, the few of them had already reached before the group, and were just a few steps distance away. It turned out that Ning Luo spoke first, her tone light and soft, her emotions indiscernible. "Congratulations on passing the recruitment trial." Qing Yu's lips curved up and before she could speak, she heard Yan Shiwu beside her say in a hypocritical tone, "Thanks you elder sis for your concern. But I'm sorry to say we did not embarrass ourselves and managed to make it through instead of being disqualified in the very first round. You must be sorely disappointed." Chapter 156. 2. Just how terrifying a woman's jealousy can be. These words sounded so familiar. They were the words that Ning Luo had said to them half a year ago, and Yan Shiwu had now thrown it back onto Ning Luo like a slap across the face. Ning Luo's face was unaffected but her eyes darkened. Is this fool bragging in front of her now? Ha! What does she think getting into the faint mist sect represents? She has merely gotten in through a miraculous stroke of luck. Does she think that just by being on Qing Yu's side and she would have nothing to worry about anymore? But when did this fool start to be on such good terms with Qing Yu? Ning Luo, this is your younger sister. Why haven't I never heard that you have a younger sister? Jiang Yihan asked in surprise. Ning Luo then replied, "She's just a commoner born from a concubine. I only have one brother born from my mother." "Oh, so I see." In large prestigious families, great importance was placed on one's common or noble birth lineage, determining their status and position, as those of common birth were usually not viewed with any importance. Yan Shiwu was greatly nauseated by her cold demeanor, looking high and mighty. This woman was always like this, using her position as the eldest daughter to treat the common offsprings as lowly servants, never thinking anything of them. But if not for the fact that she had a mother of noble birth marrying in early, in what way was she better than all the others? With the undisguised look of disgust in Yan Shiwu's eyes, Ning Luo had naturally noticed it, but she was not about to lower herself to be affected by it at all. What she was concerned about, was that seemingly weak and harmless-looking young girl who always had a faint smile hanging from her lips. From the beginning till now, she had been that one that she was unable to fathom, and the existence that she was most wary of and hated the most. "I heard that you joined the deviant department. That place is a lot more demanding than the other departments and you must take the effort to carefully establish good relations with them. If you come to offend anyone in there, I might not be able to help you at all." Ning Luo cooed like a naggy elder sister giving advice to her younger sibling, her tone highly caring, seemingly concerned, and was showing sympathy and feeling sorrowful. Qing Yu smiled and did not rebut her, but went on to say cordially, "Thank you for my elder sister's advice. My fellow senior disciples in there are very nice people and I am not facing any problems in there. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World." "EU, is that so? That's good." Ning Luo said with her lips stiffened. She just doesn't yet know just how hard a place like the deviant department is to be in. Just how many people have pulled themselves out from the deviant department on their own in the past years, with the one who remained in there the longest just over 20 days, unable to even make it till the 1-month probation trial. There will be much time for her to regret it when the time comes. Till now, she was still unable to believe what she saw back at the main hall on the day of the recruitment trials. An all-element wielder, an unmatched prodigy with maximum levels in soul power and martial strength. Humph, how can that be possible? Chapter 156. 3. Just how terrifying a woman's jealousy can be. that Yan Qinyu who was so weak and incompetent that she did not even dare to speak up, always hiding behind that crippled good-for-nothing Yan Qinbei. How could she possibly have suddenly been enlightened out of nowhere? And met with such a miraculous encounter that could not possibly have happened to someone like her. Like she had become a completely different person. And at her side, people whom she could not possibly have met or had any dealings with before have appeared. Recalling how Feng Tianhen had acted back in the main hall during the recruitment trials, Yan Ningluo was still thinking it all felt too surreal. From what she could remember, she had only seen that man 2 times herself. Once was after the internal turmoil within the Faint Mist sect was quelled, when things were at its lowest point. The sect leader Wen Renqian had picked out 10 people out from a batch of children with extraordinary gifts and brought them back to the Faint Mist sect, and she had been one of them. Feng Tianhen at that time was just an 18-year-old youth, but he was already a person so deep and unfathomable that people were unable to read clearly at all. She had seen when Wen Renqian spoke to him, he was courteous and polite, completely unlike the demeanor he used towards most disciples, but more like he relied on the man instead. The other time was when she was promoted to become an inner circle disciple within the span of 2 short years, and Feng Tianhen had said to her, "Not bad." That man was really terrifying. He was clearly so gentle and good-looking, his intoxicating gaze able to melt a person, but despite all that, he just causes fear to rise up in people's hearts for no reason. But back on that day, his demeanor towards Qin Yu had been tolerant and indulgent like never before. If Qin Yili was said to be her dream from the time that she was a very young girl, then Feng Tianhen would be the level of power she yearned to attain all this time. But, why have both these 2 people become linked to Qin Yu? In that intense clash of the goddesses, Qin Yu and her group had already said their greetings and went walking away, leaving Yan Ningluo and her group there to stare at their departing backs going further and further away. Shen Jing smiled with amusement and said, "Ningluo, that younger sister of yours is rather interesting." Yan Ningluo's eyes surged up within and did not answer, walking towards the meeting hall without a word while the others behind her exchanged glances with each other. "What up with her?" Shen Jing said with a highly baffled face. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Yu Jiang Yihan shook her head and replied, "Ningluo has never liked people of lowly birth, so I think now that her few sisters are here in the same sect as her, she isn't feeling too happy about it." Shen Jing raised an eyebrow but did not comment. The new disciples have basically all arrived in the meeting hall, and only some of the more senior inner disciples of a higher status and a few teachers were not yet there. Roughly about half an hour later, several people were then seen walking out slowly from the back of the great hall, and the graceful and handsome man in a dark green robe in the lead gazed with a smile on his face upon the disciples who were gawking curiously at him. While the new recruits were still guessing at the identity of that man, before they could react, they saw the man taking a seat down upon the seat right in the middle, his poise elegant. Chapter 156. For, just how terrifying a woman's jealousy can be, aren't all of you going to greet the sect leader? A white-bearded elderly man beside him said in a deep holler as he stared at the disciples with a fierce gaze. That was when the disciples then came to realize that the young man who was only in his early 30s was actually the mysterious sect leader, Wen Renqian. In a moment, everyone quickly retracted their gazes and went on to greet in a fluster, respects to the sect leader. Wen Renqian laughed softly, his voice gentle. "It's all right, Elder Mo, don't be too strict now. All the little ones here have never seen me before and they would naturally not recognize me. Ignorance makes them innocent." Elder Mo then relented, acknowledging with a muttered yes and a nod of his head. Wen Renqian then swept his eyes all around with a gauging gaze, and when he did not find the person he wanted to see, he opened his mouth to ask quizzically, "Feng Tianhen is not here yet?" Chief suddenly recalled he forgot something and he went back to fetch it. "He should be arriving in a while," Luo Lanji explained. "What is it that he could not get a disciple to go fetch it but has to personally make a trip himself?" Wen Renqian then asked. Luo Lonji then smiled. He said it is something important and he does not want it in another person's hands. When Ren Qian did not pursue it any further, looking like he suddenly remembered something. He looked at Luo Lonji and said, "Where is that little prodigy your deviant department recruited? Let me have a look as I have yet to see her." Qin Yu had come here together with Ming Yi and the others, but upon reaching the meeting hall, the disciples were separated according to their departments, so Qin Yu was with the others in the deviant department at that moment. Suddenly having been singularly called out and the gazes of the other fellows around her turning to fix upon her, it made her feel rather uncomfortable and she moved a couple of steps to one side. It was silent in the hall at that moment and her movements had naturally attracted the attention of others. Upon seeing that she was standing on the deviant department's side and that exceptionally beautiful face, everyone was naturally able to guess her identity. That is the prodigious all-element wielder. Why does she look so seductive and alluring as well? Hearing those words, it could immediately be ascertained that it came from a woman who was highly jealous. But I think she is very adorable instead. Someone raised his voice in rebuttal. She looks so very young and seems so frail that makes people want to protect her. Those few other girls in the deviant department are all vicious tigresses, hope that she would not be bullied by them. Hearing you say that just makes my heart ache. Why does such a good little fellow junior have to fall into the demonic claws of that bunch in there? My heart will not be able to take it. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Hearing the bunch of people bemoaning loudly like there was no one else around, the people from the deviant department almost exploded in rage. What kind of a joke are they making? What do they mean by fall into their demonic claws? Don't you think you've all gotten it backwards? That little lass is really very skilled in using her weak and frail outlook to deceive everyone. We just could not wait to hold her up in reverence, you know. Much less even dare to bully her. What a big joke. Chapter 157. 1. Romanticism from the Ancients. When Ren Qian looked at the young lady before him with interest. Is this the lass that caught the eyes of that fella Feng Tianhen? An all-element wielder? Really rather different from what he had imagined. Lass, what's your name? When Ren Qian opened his mouth to ask with a smile. Qin Yu. Although she was a little flustered with so many people's gazes fixed upon her, but since the question was directed at her, she went on to answer truthfully. When Ren Qian heard the exceptionally too clear and simple words, he could not help but smile. This lass is rather candid, and it would seem like she was not one to flatter and fawn upon others. Just what was Feng Tianhen really thinking in his mind? After having asked her for her name, when Ren Qian did not say anything more. Just at that moment, a tall and well-built figure came walking slowly into the hall, clad in his usual suit of white. But this time, the clothes on his body seemed to be different in some way. Upon close inspection, it looked no different from the uniform worn by the faint mist sect's inner disciples, but just a minute difference in the finer details of his clothes. Compared to the cloud patterns embroidered into cuffs and hem of the inner disciples' uniform, it was only when he walked closer that they saw soaring phoenixes embroidered into the front and back of the clothes on the man's body, and that was a uniform that was one of a kind throughout the entire faint mist sect. Some people were born suited to wear such a gentle and graceful white like this. Feng Tianhen's facial features were exceptionally handsome and elegant, his brows tinged with a faint gentleness, and the pure and pristine white of his clothes just emphasized the gentle demeanor his body exuded. It was a kind of attraction that shocked and overwhelmed the ladies, where they would surrender their hearts upon seeing him a second time. Even the people from the deviant department who had spent the longest period of time in Feng Tianhen's presence could not help but be mesmerized for a moment. Upon seeing him, when Ren Qian said in jest, "I heard that you went off to fetch something very important. I wonder what kind of treasure could be so precious that it needed you to protect it yourself." Feng Tianhen's gaze did not waver as he passed through everyone's stairs to come walking up to the elevated platform at the head of the hall. He then sat himself down upon the chair to the left, just below Wenren, his poise gracefully leisurely. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. It was only at that moment that everyone noticed there was a seat there and they immediately were in awe. The sect leader held the highest authority in the Faint Mist sect and in all important ceremonies. Besides the sect leader himself, everyone else remained standing. But another seat had been specially placed there this time and none of them had noticed it earlier till now, that the seat had been set there just for Feng Tianhen. Being number one in the inner circle of disciples really has its advantages. After Feng Tianhen sat down, his eyes seemed to unconsciously drift towards a particular direction, and he then said with a soft laugh, "It is indeed something important, and it wouldn't be wise to leave it in the hands of others." She didn't know whether she was mistaken, but she felt that the look that Feng Tianhen gave was actually directed right at her. Chapter 157. 2. Romanticism from the Ancients. Back on the day during the recruitment trials, teachers from 3 different departments had been determined to win the all-element wielding prodigy prize, refusing to give way to each other. But what they had not expected was for Feng Tianhen, who appeared and stuck his foot in halfway through to poach the prodigy into joining the deviant department. Although they did not dare to say anything despite the rage they felt, they scolded him countless times silently in their hearts. Upon seeing Qin Yu again now, they were still highly amicable to her, finding her pleasing to their eyes, especially Elder Jean, whose face was already stern and fierce without being angry. He was highly smiley today, looking exceptionally weird. Jean Zhehao standing close by saw his own father's foolish-looking face and felt goosebumps rise all over him, which made him suspect whether his father had taken a wrong dose of medicine today. Back to the topic at hand. When Ren Qian retracted the joking smile on his face and looked at the disciples in the great hall seriously. "From today onwards, you are a member of the Faint Mist sect. I hope that all of you will be able to strictly comply to the sect rules, and note every action that you take. Work hard on your cultivation and contribute to the Faint Mist sect, and progress together with the sect, striving towards the peak of power." All the disciples then replied in unison. "We'll remember the sect leader's wise words." After that, a senior disciple from the respective departments then distributed out the sect uniforms and identity badges to the disciples. When the disciples received their badges and uniforms, every one of them were as excited as when they had first advanced a level in their cultivation. Yan Ning Luo was the representative for the martial department, and when the youths saw that they had such an extraordinary and ravishingly beautiful female senior fellow disciple in their department, they were immediately ecstatic, their faces flushed red with delight. When it was Yan Shiwu and Yan Shiro's turn, Yan Ning Luo merely paused and rested her gaze on them for a moment, before reverting her expression back to normal as she handed the items to them. The Elixir Cultivators Department had Elder Jin's first disciple Tan Lin Roa as their representative. Having heard Elder Jin trumpeting how talented and good-looking his first disciple was, he was now still trying to entice Qin Yu over by using sex appeal. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Hence, Mu Lai had specially paid attention to him, and found that though he was rather good-looking as a person, a suave and handsome young man, but Mu Lai's gaze glanced over to peek into the deviant department side. That Feng Tianhen was a lot more outstanding than in looks than Tan Lin Roa, and the flavor of maturity in the man pounded out from the passage of time, was one thing that an inexperienced youth like Tan Lin Roa who had not yet seen enough of the world did not possess. Because Qin Yu was the one and only new recruit over at the deviant department, hence she stood right at the back of everyone else. Luo Lanji personally handed out the sect uniform to her, and when he was about to give her the identity token, he discovered that the 50 badges that had been definitely made had now run out, with none to give to Qin Yu at her turn. Chapter 157. 3. Romanticism from the Ancients. Luo Lanji knitted up his brows. What happened? His gaze then turned to gaze at the bunch of people from the deviant department, giving a silent warning. Could this be the doing of that bunch of rascals again? Right at that moment from the elevated pedestal, Feng Tianhen suddenly stood up from his chair and came walking down slowly. His voice was gentle and pleasing to the ear as he said, "Her identity token is here." Upon saying that, he then pulled out a silver-white jade badge from his sleeves, before gently tying it to the young lady's hip. Large characters could be clearly seen carved into the jade badge, Deviant Department, Qin Yu. It did not really look all that different from the identity badges of the other disciples, but people who knew stones would be able to see that the quality of the jade was special, and not any ordinary stone. It was made from priceless heavenly silkworm jade that was extremely rare. It was a treasure that Feng Tianhen happened to come across by chance, where he crafted an identity token badge for himself, and it had not been thought he would give the remaining amount of stone to this young lady. That was something nobody could have expected. Just what was it about this young lady that made Feng Tianhen favor her so much that he made him not stinge on such a precious treasure but was giving it to her just like that? It must be known that when Luo Lanji had opened his mouth to ask for the stone in the past, the black-hearted fella had adamantly refused, by quoting a ridiculously high price for it. On the other side, all the others who saw Feng Tianhen's actions, regardless of whether it was the new recruits or disciples who had been in the Faint Mist sect for many years already, they were greatly astounded and their eyes grew green with envy. It must be said that the young lady must be truly blessed. To think that the chief, the first-ranked inner circle disciple was treating her so well. But Qin Yu who had been bestowed with that honor did not look all that happy. Instead, her brows were creased up, the expression on her face looking rather complicated as she stared at the badge token at her hip. If she was not mistaken, the make of this identity token of hers was completely different from that of others. Just the material used differed by 1,000,000 miles, and the most important thing was. Qin Yu's confused gaze then turned to look at Feng Tianhen's lean hip, to see a jade token that was exactly the same as hers hanging there. This couldn't possibly be the fabled couple jade tokens, right? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, Romanticism from the Ancients. Qin Yu very nearly frightened herself to death with that stunning thought that jumped into her mind. She quickly halted the raging emotions that welled up within, her face expressionless as she said, "Thank you, my senior." Feng Tianhen looked at her with a gentle smile. "You do not seem to like the identity token all that much. You don't say." In front of so many new recruits, and he conjures up such a show of exclusivity by giving her a specially made identity token badge. Does he fear that everyone here wouldn't want to stick a dagger into her back right this instant? So is he now encouraging them by doing this? He's just making them think that she has used some underhanded means to win the favor of the inner circle's number one, like maybe seduce him with beauty. Chapter 157. 4. Romanticism from the Ancients. Although she was well filled up with nothing but scorn for him in her belly, her face as indifferent as she replied, "Not true, I like it." Feng Tianhen looked disbelievingly at her and raised an eyebrow with an indiscernible smile on his lips. "If you like it, then why is the expression on your face like this? Senior is showing me so much concern that I really do not know what kind of reaction I should give." Qin Yu explained rather believably. A rare twitch twerked at the corner of Feng Tianhen's lips. Luo Lanji and Su Li Mo could almost not maintain their stoic demeanor anymore. So this is how the little lass interacts with the chief. And the chief isn't getting angry in the slightest, but was being as indulgent to her as the rumors say. Of course the ones that were the most shocked were those who viewed Qin Yu with enmity, the bunch from the Deviant Department that were thinking how they would be able to prank Qin Yu good and proper, like how they had forced others to leave the department before. All of them had faces looking like they had just seen a ghost at that moment. The chief is really going to indulge her like that? Oh heaven! Fortunately they had not continued to dig their own graves after that lecture from Senior Luo. Otherwise, if they had really done something irreversible, there wouldn't be any medicine for regret. That girl isn't even afraid of the chief, but is putting on such an arrogant and rude attitude. No wonder she had treated them like little children. Thinking back about it, they had really been rather childish. It seems that girl is really rather capable. When Ming Jing saw that scene, he spoke his thoughts aloud softly. Feng Tianhen was deep and profound, a man that was hard to read. Few dared to speak to him with such willful carelessness, and he was quietly allowing it as well. It must be said that it was a rare and spectacular sight to see. Ming Yi beside him smirked a little smugly as she looked at Ming Jing, like he was praising her instead. That is a matter of fact. Qin Yu is really highly skilled, or how could she be accepted into the deviant department? The look of reverence on her little self caused a look of suspicion to show on Ming Jing's cold and aloof countenance. You like her? That's right. Not only is she my benefactor, she is now a good friend of mine, and she is very nice as well. Ming Yi did not see the puzzled look on her big brother's face, and she continued on to say, if big brother comes to get to know her, you will surely like her as well. No need for that. Ming Jing said with a scornful sniff, and turned his head away from her. Ming Yi was baffled for a moment, not knowing what happened. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, what did she say that got him so miffed? When Ren Qian up upon the raised pedestal said a few more words, reminding the disciples to look out for their new fellow juniors and to help them along, coupled with some appropriate words telling them to share weal and woe before the welcome meet came to a close. After Wen Ren Qian departed, the rest of the people then began to leave the meeting hall one after another. Mu Lai and the few other girls then came swarming over to Qin Yu, their eyes mischievous as they stared at the jade token hanging from her hip. Chapter 158. 1. Turning a rotten thing into something amazing. A corner of Qin Yu's mouth twitched. What is it? What are they trying to say with their eyes? Qin Yu, the inner circle's first-ranked senior foam, looks so breathtaking. Yan Shiwu was a classic dolt, easily infatuated with good looks, and regardless of whether it was a man or woman, she just had no resistance against them. Mu Lai was just looking thoughtfully at that retreating back, gradually growing further, her fingers clasped around her chin. Why do I feel that Feng Tianhen is exceptionally concerned about you? Qin Yu could not help but feel mournful when she heard that. It's just an identity badge. Aren't you thinking too much about it? Ming Yi had been staring at the badge for a good while before she said all of a sudden, throughout the entire Faint Mist sect, it seems like only Senior Feng has a piece that looks exactly the same, making your identity badge a pair with his. The young girl's highly candid words tumbled out from her mouth just like that, which caused the gazes of the other girls to grow more mischievous, like they thought that Qin Yu was hiding some unspeakable secret with Feng Tianhen. Qin Yu immediately felt her headache worsening. She looked at the jade badge at her hip like she was looking at some malevolent and ferocious monster. She then noticed the cold and aloof Yan Ning Luo walking past beside her, and the look the woman gave her just before she left was one tinged with unprovoked scorn and derision. Qin Yu immediately had the urge to want to tear that jade token off her and to smash it right onto Feng Tianhen's face. Did that guy do that on purpose? Was it because she embarrassed him on the day of the recruitment trials and he bore a grudge against her, so he had come up with this big show here today right before the countless pairs of eyes here today? After today, everyone in the Faint Mist sect would surely think that there was some level of intimacy in her relationship with Feng Tianhen. Qin Yu clenched her jaws tightly together. What a shameless and despicable man. Yan Shiroa had always been more reserved, and she did not join in with the teasing. Instead, her brows were slightly furrowed as she said in a serious tone, I feel that the man is not someone that is easy to deal with, and you must be careful around him. You must not go against him openly. Hadn't his actions here today caused Qin Yu to gain many enemies? There would surely be many disciples green with jealousy who would come find trouble with Qin Yu in future. Being closely linked to the first-ranked disciple of the inner circle was not as great as it seemed on the surface. Hearing those words that were said out of concern for her, Qin Yu nodded her head with a smile. I will be careful. Thanks second sis, read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Yen Shiroa was taken aback, her eyes a little strange as she looked at Chinyu. Did she just call her second sis? She had never thought that they would be able to get along on such amicable terms. Chinyu had been so weak and timid in the past, and although Yen Shiroa had not really detested the girl, it couldn't really be considered as liking her as well. But she had suddenly changed to seemingly become a totally different person, her entire being exuding with such blinding light that people could not take their eyes off of, unable to help themselves but to follow in her footsteps. Chapter 158. 2. Turning a rotten thing into something amazing. By now, Yen Shiroa greatly admired her, and she had not expected that Chinyu would address her as second sis despite the things that had happened in the past. That form of address which sounded so intimate made her feel like they were sisters with absolutely no feelings of estrangement. The expression on her face immediately softened quite a bit. Chinyu thought nothing of it, but Yen Shiwu was immediately blustering as she wailed, You called her second sis? I don't care. Then you have to call me third sis as well. Seeing how greatly skilled Chinyu had now become, and that she was her younger sister, just the thought of that made her feel that it was something she could brag about. But Chinyu merely looked at her with a profound gaze, seemingly refusing her request. Yen Shiwu's face immediately turned mournful. Seems like she had committed too many foolish deeds and her younger sister did not have that good an impression of her. Everything that was happening here was being carefully scrutinized by the lightning blaze unicorn, a spy hidden amongst the crowd. Although he did not fully understand confusing and winding ways of humans, but there was one thing he had seen clearly. Why would that man with ill intentions need to give such a young lady a gift? Was he trying to hook up with the little young lady? The young lady looks so naive and innocent. What is he going to do if she falls for it? This is a serious matter. He must inform the Lord about this. He is after all highly responsible. But the lightning blaze unicorn was set to fail this time. He immediately remembered that Luo Junyao had just said a couple of days ago that he was leaving to go take care of some business, and would not be in the gathered cloud loft. Just when he was all ready to leave, he coincidentally bumped into Baiji Yen. Baiji Yen was naturally aware that the lightning blaze unicorn had been assigned the role of being a spy, and he immediately knew why the man had come here. Baiji Yen draped his arm around his shoulders and brought him upstairs. What, you came here to snitch? Has the lass gotten herself in trouble again? The lightning blaze unicorn's face was befuddled and he looked at Baiji Yen with a slightly displeased look. The young lady has been very good. Why would she get herself in trouble? Ha! He has merely eaten one rabbit from her and he is being so protective of her already, not allowing him to say anything bad about her. Does not bite the hand that feeds indeed. Has the lightning blaze unicorn forgotten he was his benefactor that saved his life? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Baiji Yen thought to himself and then went on to say, all right then. She's being very good and has not gotten into any trouble. So why have you come here then? Remembering the purpose of his visit, the lightning blaze unicorn's expression grew grave and concerned as he looked at Baiji Yen seriously. Baiji Yan's face darkened as his heart sank and he could not help but ask, what is wrong now? Has the little lass met with danger or has she gotten hurt? Although Qin Yu's words really drove him up the wall at times, but Baiji Yen was filled with admiration for the intelligent and highly capable little lass, so he was naturally highly concerned about her. Thinking that something might have happened to her, he immediately became anxious. The lightning blaze unicorn looked like he did not know how to put it into words as he stood there with his brows deeply furrowed for a good while. Baiji Yen became even more flustered. What exactly happened? At least say something for heaven's sake. Chapter 158. 3. Turning a rotten thing into something amazing. The young lady is doing great and she is fine. The lightning blaze unicorn said unhurriedly. There is an extremely good-looking man among you humans today who gave her a gift as a love pledge today and she accepted it. His heart in a fluster, Bai Yen who wished he could personally fly his way into the faint mist sect right away was then stunned for a good while before he could digest that piece of news. A love pledge. A corner of Bai Yan's lips twitched a couple of times. You better not spout nonsense about things you don't understand. Do you even know what a love pledge is? The lightning blaze unicorn looked at Bai Yen scornfully and said, although I am not human, but many female beasts among my species worship and are highly infatuated with me all right. Moreover, it isn't just a matter of a day or two that man has been coveting for the little young lady, and I have spoken to the Lord about it before. Who knew that their relationship would progress so quickly just after the Lord left? Bai Yan's face grew even more amused. Then what do you say we should do? The lightning blaze unicorn snorted derisively through his nose. I would naturally have to make the little lady realize the error of her ways and turn herself around. I have decided that I will go try to convince her to not get bewitched by that man's beauty. She is too young to know the kind of tricks all these men are capable of deep inside their bellies, and you cannot blame her for getting swept off her feet for a moment in such a situation. Backing up everything he said with a reason, he made himself look seasoned and experienced. Bai Yen curled up his lips with derision, his eyes filled with contempt. That little lass is so smart and intelligent. How could she be so easily bewitched by a man? If it is that simple, Lu Junyao's handsome face would have her eating right out of his hand, but she still remains unmoved even after having faced each other for so long. Don't tell me that man you are talking about is a deity descended to the mortal realm. That might not be entirely impossible. The lightning blaze unicorn's assessment of that someone was rather high. From my experience of having seen countless humans in this world over so many years, I have not met more than 5 men I would consider good-looking, but this man here is placed among them. He paused a moment, and a feeling of crisis hit him out of nowhere. And that fella really knows how to make a girl happy. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Hearing him say that, Bai Yen inadvertently became a little worried. Would the little lass really lose her mind from the attention? After the welcome meet for the new recruits ended, life in the Faint Mist sect resumed back to normal. Compared to the other departments, disciples in the Deviant department enjoyed a lot more freedom. As the profession and field of they specialized in were all different, they usually did not interfere with each other's training but cultivated on their own. Only when they occasionally encounter a bottleneck, would Luo Lanji come give them guidance. But it was different this year as their main pillar Feng Tianhen had come back, and everyone's morale was riding high, all of them filled with confidence as they strove to show off their skills. Qin Yu came to notice that there was an exceptionally young boy among them, who did not look like he had reached the Faint Mist sect's minimum age for new recruits at all. He did not even look to be 10 yet, and he was very quiet, always keeping to himself. He always kept his head lowered and did not command much presence, making it easy for people to disregard his existence. Chapter 158. For, turning a rotten thing into something amazing. Qin Yu was a little curious and she took a couple of steps closer. She then came to hear the overbearing doll-faced young girl saying in a nasal voice, "Little Junior had better not go near that fella. Be careful he does not turn you into something strange or the chief will surely blame all of us." Something strange? Qin Yu raised an eyebrow. What does that mean? Another tall and lanky youth who had seen Qin Yu before then opened his mouth to explain. He has a strange and unique ability to turn people into all kinds of things, like wood or stone for example, or into an animal. He is even able to give his creations a soul, which is just so demonic, so all of us usually do not go close to him. I saw some trees that were alive when I first came here. Were those one of his creations? Qin Yu asked with her eyes shining brightly. That's right. Those demonic monsters are always roaming everywhere all the time and we have gotten used to it. The tall and lanky disciple replied. But one thing befuddled him. Why does the expression on the young lady's face look so excited? Qin Yu completely disregarded the look on the disciple's face and went on to approach the quiet little boy. She went on to say in an easy and jovial voice, I had not thought that I would see a soul binder in the flesh in this place. You're really good at it. Never expecting that she would be able to immediately point out his profession with the first words that she said to him, the young boy lifted his head up in surprise, to look into the young lady's exquisitely beautiful face, before quickly lowering his head back down. But that action of his had allowed Qin Yu to see the mark that filled the left side of the young boy's face. It was a strange creature with 8 waving tentacle arms that looked like an octopus, but had the unique head of a dragon. That was the mark that soul binders were born with, which was a symbol of the soul-bound beast he possessed. The ability was as rare as Midas' touch, giving shape to the formless, that could even exchange the souls between humans and spirit beasts, a heaven-defying profession that could reap completely unexpected results. She just could not fathom why the youth who possessed such a heaven-defying ability would be so quiet and withdrawn, and even looked like he had an inferiority complex. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU was it because of the mark on his face? But the more the youth tried to avoid her gaze, the more Qin Yu did not want to let him go. In the end, for the first ever time over the past several years, a hoarse and raspy voice spoke a few highly precious words. I look so hideous. Aren't you afraid of me? The jaws of the others from the deviant department at the side almost dropped their jaws to the ground. Did the scary little mute just speak? The new little junior is just incredible. All kinds of impossible things are happening to her here. Chapter 159. 1. Winning over the little boy faced with the youth's large limpid black eyes, it was seen that they still showed a hint of hesitation and timidity. Qin Yu smiled gently and said, What is there to be afraid of? You are much better looking than most people. The mark on you is a symbol of the spirit power you are born with, so you should be proud of it instead. The youth was suddenly taken aback and his entire body froze. The fair skin on his face turned red at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye, rising up till it reached the tips of his ears. This was the first time that someone did not despise him for his looks, but had instead praised him for being good-looking. Even the bound spirit beast in his body became so highly elated that it almost could not hold back from leaping out of the boy's body. When the doll-faced girl at the side saw that, the corners of her lips turned up in scorn. Crazy. Why would she come suck up to the little mute out of the blue? Really can't understand what she is thinking. The tall and lanky youth then tugged at her sleeve, signaling her to not talk so much. The young lady was after all someone the chief favors now, and it would not be good if they come to offend her. Qin Yu seemed to like the shy and bashful little boy very much, as she said many things to him. In the end, when Qin Yu reached her hand out, wanting to touch the mark on his face, the young boy became highly alarmed and quickly retreated back a step, like he was afraid of her touching him. With his face pale, he then said timidly, You must not touch me. Why? Qin Yu asked in bewilderment. The expression on the youth's face then turned sad and mournful as he said, I am not able to control my own power. I will turn you into a monster. In the deviant department, he was the least conspicuous disciple. No one dared to have any contact with him, and he would try his best to keep out of everyone's sight, not wanting to show himself before them. He really did not want to cause anything irreversible to happen because he was unable to rein in his powers. Because even he himself did not know how to change the strange creatures he had created back into their original selves. Only the chief was able to come close to him and remain safe and sound. Although the chief had always consoled him, but he just could not get over the fact that he had once turned a living person into a tree. The youth looked like he had withdrawn himself back into a sturdy little protective shell, not just to protect others from him, but also to protect himself. He was afraid that he would hurt others, but was more afraid that others might come to hurt him. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Eu Chin Yu sighed and tried her best to make herself look like a person safe to engage with. Her voice was exceptionally gentle as she then asked, "What is your name?" The youth's eyes flashed with a wary glint, and it was quite a while before he opened his mouth to utter two short words, "Xing Tong." Everyone here had always called him Little Mute, and no one knew what his name really was, as no one had asked him. This beautiful young lady was the first person who was willing to take the initiative to ask him his name. But the very next instant, the friendly young lady who made him feel secure enough to engage with then did an action that would shock and astound any other person. Chapter 159. 2. Winning over the little boy before anyone even had the time to react, Qin Yu's hand reached out to rest on the youth's cheek, and she smiled more beautifully than a flower as she said to him. "The name suits you very well, as beautiful as the way your eyes look." Xing Tong was stunned into a daze, unable to move as his cheek felt the cool temperature on his skin, and it did not feel uncomfortable at all. The bound spirit beast in his body was like a happy little kid, longing for more of the highly caring touch of the young lady, enjoying it immensely. Why is he liking it so much? Shouldn't he be in a helpless fluster, terrified that his uncontrollable powers would turn her into some kind of hideous monster? Why doesn't he feel the slightest abhorrence or any resistance against it at all? Heavens! My eyes must be going blind. It was not known who said that, who then gulped loudly in horror. Has the little mute suddenly recovered? Who knows? Why not one of you step forward to let him touch you and see? Are you crazy? You go, let him touch you yourself. The doll-faced girl was also in a state of shock. After hearing what all the others said, she then spotted a bird flying through the air above. She went on to strike the bird down from the air and threw it upon Xing Tong's body. In the end, they saw the expression on the youth's face changed in shade, and in the next instant, the bird was turned into an ugly toad going rib-bit, non-stop. The bird immediately felt extremely uncomfortable, and it attempted to stretch its wings out to fly away. It came to discover in horror that its wings have disappeared. And when it cried out, its cry had turned into a horrible sounding rib-bit. It was just flying past the place, and what has happened in just an instant? Everyone's face immediately lost their color. Fortunately they had not touched Little Mute out of curiosity, or it would have been such a tragedy. Is the new little girl Junior a deity? Why is she completely fine and unaffected? Does being that good-looking give them such an advantage as well? It was out of utter surprise that Xing Tong's head, which had been bashfully lowered all this time, now came to lift up fully, and his whole countenance came to be revealed without any part of it hidden. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Disregarding the left half of his face that was filled up by the mark of the bound spirit beast, the other half of his face had exquisitely fair skin, and a look that was enchantingly tinged with a hint of sadness, especially his pair of eyes. They were as beautiful as his name, a bright and shiny jet black, so captivating that one would not be able to take their eyes off them. The little mute has rather handsome looks. Everyone thought silently to themselves. Are you all right? Xing Tong asked anxiously, getting a little tongue-tied as his gaze remained fixed upon the young lady before him. Qin Yu was tickled by the boy's careful concern, which made her laugh. Her phoenix-like eyes flashed with an astute glint, and she said, "It looks like you do like me deep in your heart after all. And look, you haven't turned me into some strange monster, have you?" Against the looks of utter amazement that Xing Tong and the others were giving her, Qin Yu was actually aware of the real reason behind it. Chapter 159. 3. Winning over the little boy, she possessed the purest bloodline that was loved by all spirits, a bloodline that all living creatures could not help being attracted to. Hence, when the bound spirit beast in Xing Tong's body was touched by her, it became incredibly delighted, and was inevitably drawn to her, yearning to stick close to her. What are all of you doing clustered together there? It was time for morning lessons, and the classroom in the deviant department was empty, without a single person in there. Luo Lanji had followed the voices here, and had coincidentally bumped into Feng Tianhen along the way. Upon hearing his voice, one of the disciples immediately could not wait but to run over eagerly to him. "Senior, Chief, I'll be damned. Our new little girl Junior is just too godly. She touched little Mute and she is completely unaffected." Hearing that, the two men were clearly taken aback as well. They raised their eyes and immediately saw just below a tall tree, a youth sitting obediently there, looking rather frightened. Qin Yu was squatting just in front of him, talking to him with a smile on her face, and even stretching out one of her claws to pinch the boy's face. The youth did not flinch or dodge, but just sat there red-faced, allowing her to do as she pleased. Feng Tianhen's eyes narrowed and he took a few steps to walk over there. He grasped the young lady's arm and pulled her up to her feet. With a voice that wasn't as gentle as before but tinged with a certain deep darkness, he went on to ask, "What are you doing?" Xing Tong's eyes stared wide like a startled little fawn. "Chief." Qin Yu creased up her rose, and flung off his hand in great displeasure. "Doesn't Senior know that appearing so suddenly out of the blue like this can scare the life out of a person?" The difference in her demeanor at that moment was as different as light and day compared to the caring and concerned person towards Xing Tong earlier. The new little girl Junior was indeed highly favored. To think that she dared to speak to the chief in such a manner. "How come I did not know that you were so timid?" Feng Tianhen said with a laugh when he heard that. His eyes then turned to the frightened Xing Tong. "Don't you know that you should have kept your distance away from her?" The look on the youth's face then became even uglier, turning a pale shade as his body trembled slightly. When Qin Yu saw that she stood in front of him protectively to block Feng Tianhen. "Why are you bullying a kid for nothing? I was the one who took the initiative to come talk to him. He did not do anything at all." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Seeing her so protective like a mother hen, Feng Tianhen was helpless. "There are many kinds of danger here in the deviant department. I was just worried that you are not familiar with things in here and might get hurt as you just came here recently. Am I not still good and well now? Senior has worried himself for nothing." Those were clearly words said out of concern for her, but for some unknown reason, Qin Yu just could not help but have a strange feeling inside, her mind subconsciously repulsive. To put it more accurately, right from the very beginning, she had felt a kind of repulsion towards Feng Tianhen, and she couldn't really pinpoint the reason for it, but her body just seemed to resist him coming close to her. Chapter 159. For, winning over the little boy towards that intentional cold indifference, not to mention just Feng Tianhen, everyone else in the deviant department who were presently watching the scene there could also sense it, which caused them to burst out in cold sweat. Their new little fellow Junior is really quite a character, to think that she dares to stand up to the chief like this. Feng Tianhen had always seemed so gentle, especially when he was before Qin Yu, like he would never ever get angry. Turning around to the others with a faint smile, he then said, "The deviant department has enjoyed much freedom all these years, but when I was with the sect leader and the others in the meeting hall, I heard that 2 high-level teachers would be joining the deviant department at the end of the year. They will be teaching all of you, so I hope that from today onwards, all of you can learn to restrain yourselves a little, so that you do not create unnecessary trouble for everyone in future." His voice was still just as gentle and pleasing to the ear, but the underlying meaning in his words was immediately understood by everyone there. Has the chief come to know how they had tried to pull a prank on their new little Junior in the past, and he was now giving all of them an indirect warning? Everyone burst out in a bout of cold sweat, their eyes looking ruefully at Luo Lanji at the side. "Didn't you agree to keep it a secret, Senior?" After Qin Yu heard those words, a look of surprise showed on her face. Lu Junyao had told her before that he would be coming into the Faint Mist sect as a teacher to help her locate her mother's soul fragments, but he had not mentioned anything about a second person coming in together with him. To have 2 high-level teachers join the sect at the same time, will they attract too much attention to themselves? What will they do if they become suspicious? But what she had not thought was that Lu Junyao himself was not aware of that fact. The other teacher joining the sect was someone she had never expected at all. It was just deep autumn when the Faint Mist sect's recruitment trials started, and in a blink, the weather was already starting to turn colder and colder, the season running straight into winter when the first snowfall fell. Not including the years she spent roaming everywhere as a formless spirit, this was the 7th year since Qin Yu came to this other world, but this year, she finally did not need to be holed up within the tiny tranquil abode inside the Duke of Eternal Peace Manor. Time passed in a whirl and they had been in the Faint Mist sect for more than half a month, and many of the people in there had come to be acquainted with each other. Besides Qin Yu, no matter whether they were sincere or being hypocritical, the other 11 disciples in the deviant department no longer ostracized Qin Yu, because they just could not find anything to hate about her. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. She was probably the kind of person that once people came to know well, they would not be able to help themselves but adore the person. Little Junior, come here quickly and have a look. Why do I suddenly have so many red spots on my face when I woke up this morning? An exaggeratedly shrill scream sounded from behind. Qin Yu, who had been enjoying the snowy scenery outside, almost had her eardrums ruptured from the sudden screech, and she turned herself around in speechlessness. She was met with the sight of a tall figure who had his face covered and was glancing around furtively as he scuttled his way over, looking at her like he had just found his savior. However patient Qin Yu could possibly be, she just could not hold herself back from saying with scorn in her voice, "What happened to you again?" Chapter 160. 1. It's him. She had really not met any man more nitpicky than him. It could be overlooked if he was just always too concerned with his looks, but for him to get into such a mad panic when he was just bitten by a bug and expecting her to cultivate some kind of miraculous elixir to ensure it would not leave a scar, she was driven to the edge of madness. She really wanted to blow up. She was an elixir cultivator, you know. Not some damned beautician. The man did not seem to have noticed the shade of her face but had gone on to push his own face close to her with a pitiful look on his face. Little Junior, have a look and see what kind of an illness I have been stricken with. Is it very serious? Qin Yu took a deep breath and forcibly pushed down the rage threatening to well up inside as she glanced at the man. Did you sneak out to eat something secretly again last night? Huh? How did you know that? The man asked in shock. I have already told you that you have a sensitive constitution and you must not eat things that are too stimulating. Why can't you just rein in your urges? Qin Yu asked, her brows creasing up as she felt a headache coming on, unable to recall how many times the man was kicking up such a big fuss over a small allergic reaction. Qin Yu pulled a green porcelain bottle out from her sleeves and said to him, "This is the last time. Next time, don't come look for me even if you get disfigured." After that, she walked away and did not turn back no matter how loud the man called out to her. These people were really getting to be a little too much. If not for the fact that there were traces of her mother's soul fragments in this place, she would have left long ago. Young lady. As she walked, a snowball was suddenly tossed down from up above a tree. Fortunately, her quick reflexes allowed her to dodge in time, or that snowball might have blasted onto her head. Dread filled up inside Qin Yu. She had immediately known who that was the moment she heard the voice. She gritted her teeth together and said, "What are you doing up there? You were waiting for me to pass just to attack me sneakily." Her ears had already suffered under the grinding drone from the guy's back at the deviant department, and now this beast here had come running to join in the fun as well. She started to wonder just what Luo Junyao had been thinking, to appoint such a clumsy and simple-minded fool to come protect her. Is he sure that he wasn't just adding to her troubles instead? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The Lightning Blaze Unicorn was a refined and handsome sight, dressed in a suit of white robes, almost perfectly camouflaged against the white snow that blanketed everything. But as he was really too tall in stature, but had chosen a branch that was only as thick as a baby's arm to crouch upon, he looked most comical, making Qin Yu worry whether the branch would break under his weight. His head peeked out from behind the tree to look at her, his white teeth showing. "Young lady, where are you headed off to for fun?" Qin Yu looked at him expressionlessly. "Are they always so relaxed at the martial department? How come no one noticed that you have sneaked out?" The lightning blaze unicorn's eyes widened as he started to explain. "I did not sneak out from the department all right. The teacher back at the department said that if I can beat him into the ground in 10 moves, he will let me come out to play. I remembered to pay mind to his reputation and I did not kill him instantly with 1 move, even giving him a handicap of 3 moves. Chapter 160. 2. It's him. Oh, you're really so thoughtful, aren't you? It could be overlooked if it was just a 12th level spirit beast picking on the weak. But when it was boasting about it so shamelessly, then she really did not know what to say. Moreover, could he not tell that the teacher was politely telling him that his demand to leave was being rejected? To think that he really went on to fight the teacher. To have disgraced the teacher right before so many other disciples, it could be seen that he really was just a simple-minded beast who was unable to understand the ways of humans. It was thought that he would surely be marked with hatred by the teacher after he returns back to the martial department. "Come down here and speak. Why must you always hide yourself up on a tree?" Her neck was feeling sore from craning her neck back to speak. "Doesn't that fellow mind getting pins and needles from squatting behind a tree the whole day?" Hearing that, the lightning blaze unicorn then obediently jumped down from the tree. The falling snow had stopped and an occasional sprinkling of snow would fall down from the trees. Several fresh sets of footprints could be seen running through the newly fallen snow. Qin Yu followed beside the footprints as she walked, and then started to make perfunctory chatter with a certain beast with her. "What has your lord been busy with recently?" The lightning blaze unicorn thought it fun and imitated Qin Yu by following the footprints as he listened to her speak. He then subconsciously answered without thinking, "Huh. I think the Lord went back to cloud heaven." Qin Yu was dazed for a moment and her footsteps halted. Did anything happen? Why did he suddenly go back? "I am not sure, but my lord said that he will come to the Faint Mist sect once he has dealt with some business. He will probably be back in a few days," the lightning blaze unicorn replied. Qin Yu nodded and did not ask any more. As the man would frequently just appear by her side all of a sudden, it somehow felt a little strange that she had not heard a peep out of him for a good 2 weeks at a stretch now. At that same time in another side of the Faint Mist sect, Yen Ning Luo had been summoned to the great meeting hall. It was cold and desolate in the great hall as the chill wind blew through the vast empty space. A man sat high up upon the elevated pedestal as the teapot upon the table before him let out a cloud of steam above it, that blurred the man's countenance. Yen Ning Luo retracted her gaze and said respectfully, "I wonder why Master has summoned Ning Luo here for." Most of the disciples throughout the Faint Mist sect addressed Wen Renqian as sect leader and Yen Ning Luo was one of the few people who addressed the man as master. It was because she had been following at the man's side since a very young age and over the many years that had passed, the relationship built up between the two people was naturally not an ordinary one. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Wen Renqian raised his eyes and laughed softly. After this year, Ning Luo would then be 18 already. "Yes." Yen Ning Luo answered, not sure where this conversation was heading. "Your previous engagement with Xianyuan Che was called off. Was it because you already had someone in your heart?" Wen Renqian suddenly asked, which caught Yen Ning Luo off guard and she was unable to react for a moment. "What does Master mean by that?" Wen Renqian shook his head with a laugh. "I was naturally just concerned about you. A girl should have someone she can rely on when she grows up, so is there anyone in the Faint Mist sect that takes your fancy?" Chapter 160. 3. It's him. Yen Ning Luo's eyes sharpened slightly. "Thank you Master for your concern, Ning Luo does indeed have someone in my heart, but..." He is not from our sect. When Ren Qian just smiled and did not say anything as he poured out a cup of tea, and a disciple coincidentally announced at that moment, "Sect leader, a guest is here waiting outside the mountain gates." Yan Ning Luo was just about to ask for her leave when she heard Wen Ren Qian say to her with a smile, "Ning Luo, help me go welcome the guest." Although a little puzzled, Yan Ning Luo did not probe any further but just acknowledged the order and went out. At the foot of the Faint Mist Sect Mountain, a simple and inconspicuous horse carriage was stopped in this place as a black-robed youth sat on the outside of the carriage. The horsewhip held in his hand occasionally poked at the horses behind, the youth seeming bored and was looking for something to kill time with. After a good while had passed, he turned his head and spoke to the person inside the carriage, his tone of voice sounding highly displeased. "Lord, why hasn't anyone come out yet? Is the Faint Mist sect putting on airs now? We came here unannounced, so it is normal that we will have to wait for a while." The voice inside the carriage was cold and magnetic, highly pleasing to the ear like the clink of jade beads falling upon a dish. The black-robed youth stiffened his lips and did not complain any further. It then looked like he suddenly remembered something, and his eyes turned slightly as he asked with secret delight, "Say, would that person be very happy coming to know about this?" The person in the carriage did not respond for a long while. It was after quite a while that the voice inside then rang out. "Hopefully she would not be mad at me. Why would that be? My lord has spared no effort, all because of..." The black-robed youth had just opened his mouth to explain further when he saw the mountain gates in front slowly opening, as a slender and graceful figure came out slowly, moving towards them. People with cultivation had better hearing and sharper eyesight than regular people, and hence the youth immediately recognized the slightly familiar figure from afar, where he quickly said in surprise, "Isn't that Princess Ning Feng?" "And she is." Yan Ning Luo's footsteps were light and slow, but the speed which had seemed slow brought her quickly in front of them. Upon seeing just the unimpressive horse carriage at the foot of the mountain and the youthful coachman seated on its outside, Yan Ning Luo could not help but raise an eyebrow slightly, seemingly a little curious who the guest was, but her face remained calm and indifferent like always. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. She parted her lips slightly and said, "I came under the orders of the sect leader to receive our esteemed guest. Horse carriages are unable to go into the Faint Mist sect, so can I implore our distinguished guest to first disembark, so that I can walk you in." After a moment of silence, a large hand that was slender and fair then stretched out behind the curtain, a voice filled with iciness that would not melt over eternity just like before, the chill seeping into one's bones, but was so unforgettable, that said only two words. "Appreciate the trouble." Yan Ning Luo's entire body froze, and her calm and indifferent eyes suddenly flared wide, like she could not believe that that was really the voice she had just heard. Chapter 160. 4. It's him. Is she mistaken? The voice, one that was so familiar to her, the same voice that she was able to hear only in her dreams. Yan Ning Luo's eyes stared unblinkingly at the horse carriage, till the owner of that hand pulled the curtain aside, finally revealing his true countenance. "It really is you." Yan Ning Luo's eyes were misty, her voice a little hoarse. "Little young lady, do you see? I have really performed very well recently, so can you even consider preparing a rabbit feast, with steamed, braised, roasted and fried rabbit for me?" The lightning blaze unicorn nagged persistently as he followed behind Qin Yu. Qin Yu covered her ears with her hands, her face mournful. "Do not follow me anymore. It isn't as if you are not aware that the Faint Mist sect prohibits any form of cooking on your own within its premises. I'll have a black mark against me if we're caught. What is there to be afraid of? Isn't Feng Tianhen the chief among the inner circle's disciples? Moreover, all the elders are afraid of him almost half to death, so just say that he is the one who wants to eat if you get caught. I can guarantee you that no one will dare to give you a black mark." The expression on the lightning blaze unicorn's face looked as if it was saying, "I am so clever," seemingly seeking for Qin Yu to praise him. "Is there something wrong with you? Don't you know how malicious that man really is? If he finds out that I made use of him, I will have to pay him back 10 times at least. Just because of you gluttony and you want me to do something so dangerous. Wait till I go tell Lu Junyao about this and let him smash you back into your original form. The lightning blaze unicorn immediately looked highly aggrieved. Why are you threatening to have me turned into my original form the moment you disagree with me? I am after all still a 12th level high-grade spirit beast. I have a reputation to maintain, you know. If you want to maintain your reputation, then use that clever mind of yours a little, and not come up with such silly ideas trying to take advantage of me. Qin Yu said with a cold stare. The lightning blaze unicorn then clamped his mouth shut ruefully. It was agreed that there would be a rabbit feast to eat if he performed well. The Lord lied to me again. I will not believe you again. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Qin Yu was on her way back to the dormitory when she bumped into the doll-faced girl from the deviant department. Compared to the malicious way the girl already tried to pick on her, she was not exceptionally friendly instead. Little Junior, where are you headed for? The girl asked as she latched on to Qin Yu's arm. Tell you something. We have a teacher who came in today, and we are all headed to the classroom to go wait. The chief will also be there. Teacher? Qin Yu raised an eyebrow. He arrived so soon. Didn't the lightning blaze unicorn say that he went back to cloud heaven? And he is already back. Qin Yu did not think any further about it but just allowed the doll-faced little girl to pull her along as they went on their way to the classroom. Chapter 161. 1. A wolf only has one mate throughout its life. When Qin Yu and the doll-faced girl reached the deviant department, they found that everyone else had reached there, and they were the last to arrive. Feng Tianhen was leaning at the side of the window, his gentle and exquisite countenance staring into the snowy scenery outside with a faint smile hanging from his lips, a hazily unreal sight to behold. This man almost gave off a surreal feeling, when he was clearly close within a person's hand's reach, but it was impossible for them to get close enough to touch him. The others were gathered together and locked in heated discussion, but there was not a single person at the man's side, forming an independent space, an invisible barrier that no one was able to breach. Seeing her approach, the smile at the corners of Feng Tianhen's lips deepened, and his voice was gentle as he said, "You're here." Qin Yu acknowledged with a slight nod of her head. Although they belonged to the same department, it was as the rumors say. Feng Tianhen seldom appeared before everyone, his movements unpredictable. Hence, though Qin Yu did not like him all that much, but whenever feelings of disgust and hatred rose in her heart, he would then be far away from her line of sight, which worked out rather well for both of them. Sometimes, suspicion would grow in her as well, somehow feeling that the man understands her very well, but she just cannot recall that they had ever met before. The doll-faced girl watched her chief come walking over and she quickly dodged away to the side. Although the chief was a very gentle person, but he did not indulge her like how he gave in to their little junior, so she thought she had better stay a little further away. A teacher is coming here today, but you do not seem to be surprised in the slightest. Feng Tianhen said with a calm smile on his face. Qin Yu lifted an eyebrow. Surprise? Feng Tianhen signaled for her to look at the others from the deviant department, and she saw that the expression on everyone's faces were looking rather excited, where even the highly introverted Xing Tong had a curious twinkle in his eyes. In contrast, she was incredibly composed, like she already knew about it beforehand. Faced with that man's eyes that seemed as though he had seen through something, Qin Yu's face did not change in the slightest. A teacher is also just a human with 2 eyes and a nose. Is that anything to be so surprised about? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Feng Tianhen merely laughed softly and did not say anything more. About another half an hour passed when they heard sounds outside. The sounds of footsteps reached their ears and someone immediately scuttled over to the window to look outside. He then let out a cry of surprise. The sect leader actually came here personally. And right behind him, that is our new teacher. That tone of unsuppressible shock made all the others even more curious. They slowly turned their gazes and saw two people walking through the snow from afar. At the front, Wen Renqian was dressed in an elegant soothing green, and it was probably because the man behind him was just too eye-catching that caused everyone's eyes to disregard Wen Renqian completely, but were all fixed upon the tall and lean figure of the young man dressed in a dark red long robe, a cape over his back and a bamboo hat over his head. Chapter 161. 2. A wolf only has one mate throughout its life. Most people who practice cultivation were usually not afraid of the cold, so even in the wintry chill of snowy lands, they were usually not seen to be dressed in very thick clothes. But the man who looked to be only about 20 years of age and should be a strong strapping young man, was however bundled up tightly, like he was afraid of such weather. It was till the man came closer that it could be seen that his skin was indescribably fair, his complexion paler than that of a sickly elderly old man would be, like he was a creature who lived thirsty for blood, and seldom saw the sun. The color of his lips however, struck a clear contrast against his fair and almost translucent skin, the bright vivid red like blood. Looking upon his countenance, it really looked like the face had been carefully carved out by the hands of the Creator, flawless in its beauty, brilliant and magnificent. He looked like a man who had walked out from a painting, his facial features beautiful to the extreme, so exquisite looking at them from afar, not to mention gazing upon the face close up, just how stunningly handsome would he be. The teacher looks like he's just about the same age as us. Can he really teach us anything? And don't you think his looks are a little too capable of bringing ruin to a country and its people? How am I going to be able to still my heart and concentrate on cultivation like that? This voice that spoke through tightly clenched teeth had come from none other than the slightly effeminate-looking man who was always overly concerned with his looks. The sect leader personally escorted the man here. I think he must surely be somebody. You can see that he is highly skilled with just one glance at him, and he doesn't look all that approachable and easy to get close to. Will he be very fierce? The dull-faced girl asked, her face looking very worried. Xing Ting lifted his head and his eyes carefully studied the man, but he did not voice out his opinion. But then he suddenly spotted something, and he opened his mouth, a little stunned. With a voice that was just barely audible, he said, his eyes are green in color. Qin Yu was standing just beside him and she had naturally heard the boy. Her eyes that were lowered subconsciously raised up to look outside the window, and unable to believe what she saw, her eyes widened slightly as she stood dazed in her spot. She had thought that the person coming here was Lu Junyao and she had naturally not shown much surprise before. Never had she ever thought that the person who was coming here would be. Within the span of time those thoughts ran through her mind, Wen Renqian and the young man was at that moment already slowly walking in. The man lifted a hand to lightly flick the snow off his shoulders, before he pulled off his bamboo hat. The color of snow and frost that covered the head under the hat spilled forth, and his dark green eyes swept one round over the room, till they saw the young lady the man had missed for so long, where a faint gentleness then came to show. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, this man here. Why do I find him a little familiar? Silver hair, green eyes. Could it be? It's the infamous Grim Reaper of the Water's Edge Kingdom, the Duke of Vast Seas. Oh my heavens! Can this really be true? Chapter 161. 3. A wolf only has one mate throughout its life. The expressions on everyone's faces had gone from shock to disbelief before they were now filled with fiery fervor. This man is right up there among the top 10 most highly skilled fighters in the Constellation continent, and he had actually come to the Faint Mist sect to be their teacher. This must all be just a dream. Seeing every single one of them getting so excited they were no longer themselves, Wen Renqian could not help but laugh out loud. He then looked at the man beside him and said, "Looks like you are really famous in these lands. See how happy all of them are. It's my honor." Qin Yili nodded slightly, the expression on his face unchanged. When Ren Qian then turned himself back around to say to everyone, "Looks like everyone already knows who this man standing beside me really is. But no matter what his identity was in the past, he is your teacher from today onwards. All of you must be obedient and listen to him, or this teacher will not show any mercy." Everyone immediately nodded their heads quickly. Who would dare not listen? The gap between their powers against this man here was just too great, and if they do not listen to what he says, they will surely be made to face torment with their own blood. When Ren Qian left the disciples with a couple more instructions before he bade Qin Yili farewell and departed from there. Once he left, the atmosphere in the place became a little strange. Feng Tianhen had kept his eyes on the man since the man had come in, and his gaze never left the man. He saw that the man's beast-like eyes had been locked onto him all this time, looking as if the man was going to tear him into shreds at any moment. Interesting. Why does this man feel so much enmity towards me? Do we know each other? Back when I was traveling through the lands, I was fortunate enough to pass through the borders of the Water's Edge Kingdom, and there was no one that was unaware of the Duke of Vast Seas' fame. So I am rather curious why the revered Duke of Vast Seas would choose to give up his position as one who holds power above all but one man, to come here to such a faraway faint mist sect. Feng Tianhen's voice was soft and gentle, as he asked with a meaningful smile. Qin Yili took 2 slow steps closer to him and said in a cold hard voice, "To each his own. Though power and authority is highly enticing, but there are other things more precious than that." As he spoke, he noticed that the young lady had a rather complicated expression on her face as she fixed her gaze upon him, which he could not help but start to feel uneasy. Why hasn't she said a thing? Does she blame him for coming here uninvited? Seeing the loneliness and despair in those green eyes, Qin Yu could no longer bear it anymore, and she opened her mouth to say, "Teacher, can we speak in private over on the side?" Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Hearing those words, the man with his cold and icy demeanor really went outside with the young lady, leaving all the others to discuss fervently. What is the little junior doing? Is she trying to get near to the Duke of Vast Seas? To establish a closer relationship? Will she be able to do that? The man does not look like a person that is easy to get along with at all. Why not you try to get close to him and see? No. I don't dare to. Feng Tianhen's eyes darkened imperceptibly as he looked at the 2 people standing outside under the tree, their backs facing him. He did not know what they were talking about, but he just had a feeling that the 2 of them were acquainted. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.